If you live with diabetes, the most dangerous thing on your plate is not the sugar you can see, it is the confusion you cannot. That quiet uncertainty turns dinner into a gamble and teaches you to fear the foods that once felt like home. I have watched patients trade away flavor for caution and still face waves of sleepiness, cravings, and worry. Here is the turn that gives you control. When you build a simple plate on purpose and pair every carbohydrate with fiber, protein, and a touch of healthy fat, your blood sugar rises more gently and your hunger quiets for longer. The solution is not a crash rule. It is a calm ritual you can begin tonight. We were told to avoid and to restrict until eating felt like a chore. Yet the real driver of the highs and lows is speed. Highly refined foods move through the gut quickly and push glucose upward like a strong wind. Fiber slows the ride. Protein and modest fat ask the stomach to take its time, and a slower stomach means a softer peak after a meal. That is why a plate anchored by non-starchy vegetables, a reasonable share of protein, and a small serving of higher fiber carbohydrates can taste generous and still keep your numbers steady. Keep this grounded in your kitchen. Picture a dinner plate you already own. Let one half belong to colorful, non-starchy vegetables you actually enjoy. Give 1/4 to a protein you can cook well and season simply. Save the last quarter for a higher fiber comfort food that loves you back. The strength of this approach is its simplicity and staying power. You do not need measuring cups to feel better. The limitation is that bodies are personal. Medicines, movement, and stress change the way you respond. Keep your meter or continuous monitor close. Observe your 2-hour and bedtime numbers and adjust with small steps. I say this as a physician who has sat beside many kitchen tables. You do not have to choose between pleasure and control. You have to choose structure. Swap vegetables, swap proteins, swap grains, and the frame still holds. The weakness shows up when the frame is ignored between meals, or when the quarter plate becomes a white bread hill. Stay gentle with yourself and stay curious. Notice the energy that arrives when you pair wisely and how steady feels in the late afternoon. Claim a small win tonight. Build one plate on purpose. Let vegetables take the lead. Let protein carry fullness, and let a fiber-rich carbohydrate play the steady drumline in the back. If that sounds almost too simple, that is the point. In the next part, I will move from promise to pan, so you can taste steady blood sugar and keep joy on your plate from the first bite to the last. The greatest risk you face is not a sweet bite here or there. It is the quiet belief that pleasure and control cannot live on the same plate, a belief that pushes people into harsh restriction or quiet giving up and leaves blood sugar unruly and meals joyless. I am offering a different path beginning now, one that keeps flavor in your life while calming the numbers by building each plate on purpose, pairing every carbohydrate with fiber, protein, and a gentle fat, and listening to the way your own body answers back. Here is my promise and my ask. I will bring you meals that are simple, affordable, and grounded in how digestion and satiety really work. And you will bring curiosity and patience because bodies learn in patterns rather than stunts. When fiber slows the road, when protein and modest fat ask the stomach to take its time, the rise after a meal softens and the crash loses its teeth. This is physiology that you can feel, and it is the backbone of everything we will cook together. My aim is steady blood sugar that moves like a calm tide while your plate still tastes like home. We will use a flexible frame that fits an apartment, kitchen, or a backyard grill. Let half of your plate belong to colorful, non-starchy vegetables you enjoy. Give 1/4 to a protein you can season simply. And save the last quarter for a higher fiber carbohydrate that brings comfort without chaos. We will prove this in your own routine, and let your after-meal numbers and evening energy guide the smallest of tweaks. There is real strength here, and there are honest trade-offs. The strength is freedom from counting every crumb and the return of meals that feel generous. The trade-off is attention. Notice how you feel at roughly the 2-hour mark and again before bed, And respect the days when medicine shifts or stress runs high. Choose salmon or chicken, beans or quinoa, roasted broccoli or a crisp salad. And the frame still holds. But if you lean on ultra-processed snacking between meals or turn the last quarter into a white bread hill, the food will take the speed back. If you have been told that safety and satisfaction cannot sit at the same table, stay with me. Tonight we begin with one deliberate plate and a quiet check of your response, and in the next part, I will meet you at the stove so you can taste what steady feels like without surrendering the joy that makes dinner worth sitting down for. The danger I worry about most is not a spoon of sugar, it is speed, because when a plate has no structure, the meal races through your system, and the rise after eating can turn into a steep climb that steals your energy and your calm. I want you to have an answer in the very first minute. Build your plate on purpose, and pair every source of starch with fiber, with protein, and with a gentle fat, so the stomach takes its time and the curve after a meal softens into a hill you can stroll rather than a cliff you tumble down. Think of your gut as a road with weather. Refined foods are a tailwind that pushes glucose up fast. Fiber lays soft brakes across that road. Protein and modest fat ask the stomach to pause, and a slower stomach often means a kinder peak. That is the quiet physiology that sits under a plan that truly works in real homes. When half of your plate carries colorful, non-starchy vegetables, when 1/4 holds a protein you enjoy and can season simply, and when the last quarter welcomes a higher fiber carbohydrate, you turn that gust into a steady breeze, and your day becomes easier to steer. The beauty of this framework is freedom with boundaries. You can choose salmon or chicken, beans or quinoa, roasted broccoli or a crisp salad, and the frame still holds, which means you are not counting every bite to earn steady energy. The cost is attention. If an ultra-processed snack slips between meals, or if your last quarter turns into a soft white roll mountain, the food takes back control of the speed, and the peak returns. I have seen this play out at the tables of retired teachers and new grandparents. When the plate keeps its shape, they stay clear-headed through the afternoon and sleep more comfortably at night. Let me be honest about limits so you are not blindsided. Bodies are personal and days are different. A change in medicine, a quiet day on the couch, or a storm of stress can nudge the same meal to behave in a new way. That does not break the plan, it just asks for a small adjustment. Notice your after-meal reading or your energy roughly 2 hours after eating and again before bed. If you are running higher than you like, nudge more space toward vegetables at the next plate, or trade a refined choice for a higher fiber partner that still tastes like home. Here is a picture you can use tonight. Take the dinner plate you already own. Let one half belong to vegetables you actually enjoy, maybe roasted carrots with a little olive oil, bright green beans with a squeeze of lemon, or a skillet of cabbage with sweet onions. Give 1/4 to a protein you cook well, and keep the seasoning clean so the meal tastes like itself. Save the last quarter for a higher fiber carbohydrate that loves you back, a warm spoon of beans, a scoop of oats if breakfast for dinner calls your name, or a small side of quinoa folded with herbs. The advantage is that this plan never asks you to be perfect, it only asks you to repeat a calm plate. The drawback is that repetition can feel quiet, and quiet wins do not shout, but they add up, and that is how people reclaim their days. If the risk that startled you was speed, the immediate fix is structure. Start with one intentional plate, and notice the change in your hunger and your steadiness 2 hours later. In the next part, I will bring you a stovetop method that makes vegetables crave worthy and protein tender without stress. So the structure you just learned turns into a meal you will look forward to making again. The quiet hazard that unravels so many good intentions is not a spoon of sugar. It is the all-or-nothing mindset that turns eating into a fight. When you try to scrub every trace of starch and sweetness from your day, your body answers with low energy and sharp cravings, and by night, the plan often cracks. I want you safe without losing the joy that makes a meal worth sitting down for, and the way we do that is simple. We pair every carbohydrate with fiber, protein, and a gentle fat, and we watch how your own numbers and energy respond after a meal, so we can adjust with confidence. I have watched people skip a midday meal to be good and arrive at dinner tired and hungry, only to overshoot and feel defeated. That is not a flaw. That is your biology asking for steadier fuel. Refined starches move fast and push glucose upward. Fiber slows the road. Protein and modest fat ask the stomach to take its time and help your brain register fullness so you do not keep chasing satisfaction. When you lean on this pairing, the rise after eating softens, and the hours that follow feel calmer and more predictable. Here is the risk and the remedy. Extreme cutting can deliver a quick lightness, but it often invites late-day cravings, mindless snacking, and restless sleep. Pairing and structure return control. Keep portions inside a plate that gives half the space to non-starchy vegetables, a quarter to a protein you can cook well, and the last quarter to a higher fiber carbohydrate that tastes like comfort but acts like a partner. The strength of this approach is how well it fits real American life, from a crowded apartment kitchen to a backyard cookout. The trade-off is attention. Notice how you feel about 2 hours after eating, and again before bed, and protect the space between meals from ultra-processed snacks that hand the speed back to the food. Bring this to your table tonight. If dinner has a baked potato, keep it small. Add a generous pile of green beans or roasted carrots, and place a simply seasoned piece of chicken or salmon beside it. If breakfast is toast, pick a higher fiber loaf, add eggs or Greek yogurt, and a handful of berries. If lunch is soup, reach for a bean-based bowl and add a salad so fiber does the breaking. None of this demands perfection. It calls for deliberate choices repeated often. There are honest limits, and they are not a failure. Medicines, movement, and stress will nudge the same plate to behave differently from one day to the next. Let that teach you. If your after-meal reading or your mood and energy are higher or lower than you like, give more space to vegetables at the next meal, or trade a refined grain for a higher fiber partner that still tastes like home. Trust grows when you see the pattern with your own eyes. You learn that you do not have to choose between pleasure and safety. You have to choose structure and keep showing up for yourself. If the danger that caught your attention was the swing that follows extreme cutting, the remedy begins now with one intentional plate and a quiet check about 2 hours later. In the next part, I will move to the stove and show you a method that makes vegetables crave-worthy and protein-tender, so that safety and satisfaction can finally share the same plate. The quiet risk that pushes people back toward takeout is the story that healthy cooking must be slow, bland, and joyless, a story that makes dinner feel like a chore and leaves blood sugar chasing the speed of convenience food. I want you to take that risk off the table tonight with 2 simple tools that change how your meal behaves. I reach first for an air fryer that creates a tender center with a crisp edge while using far less oil, and then for a stove method that steams and then sautés vegetables so they stay bright, sweet, and satisfying. The promise is clear. You keep flavor, you protect your numbers, and your kitchen starts to feel like an ally again. Here is why this works in ordinary American kitchens. Fast-moving hot air dries and browns the surface of protein while the inside stays moist, so chicken thighs taste rich without a heavy pan of oil and salmon flakes, cleanly, without a greasy coat. When you pair that protein with a generous share of non-starchy vegetables and a modest portion of higher fiber carbohydrates, digestion slows, the rise after eating softens, and fullness lasts without the crash. The steam then sauté method treats vegetables with respect. A brief covered simmer softens the fibers without washing out flavor, and a short uncovered sauté with a little olive oil brings gloss and a gentle snap. Carrots turn sweet, cabbage turns silky, green beans keep their bite, and half the plate becomes something you look forward to rather than tolerate. Every method carries strength and trade-offs. The strength of an air fryer is speed and a crisp finish with less oil, perfect for a weeknight when you crave comfort but need control. The trade-off is that bottled sauces and pre-mixed seasonings can hide added sugars and too much sodium, and lean cuts can dry if you walk away. Keep seasoning simple. Taste before salting again, and pull the basket a moment early so juices settle back in. The strength of steam, then sauté, is texture and flavor with little fuss, while the trade-off is that crowding the pan or drowning vegetables steals color and snap. Give them room. Keep the lid only long enough to soften, then finish uncovered so their natural sweetness blooms. This is how I bring it to the table after a long day. If you want chicken, season thighs with a light hand and air fry until the surface is gently crisp and the center stays tender. On the stove, let onions and cabbage soften under a lid for a short minute. Then lift the lid and let a small kiss of olive oil carry them to the finish. If fish sounds right, a lemon-dusted fillet of salmon cooks quickly in the air fryer while a skillet turns green beans bright and snappy in minutes. The plate you serve looks generous, eats with pleasure, and still respects the slower stomach you need for a softer peak after a meal. Let me be candid about limits so nothing surprises you. These are reliable tools, not magic wands. Medicine changes, a quiet day without movement, or a rush of stress can nudge the same meal to behave differently. If you're after-meal reading, or your energy runs higher or lower than you like, shift more space to vegetables at the next plate, choose a leaner protein, or trade a refined side for beans, or a whole grain that brings fiber to the table. Keep bottled sauces to a light drizzle, and read labels so you do not hand the speed back to the food. We began with a risk that healthy means dull and difficult. The practical answer is to let your tools do quiet science in your kitchen. Air that moves quickly gives you crisp without a deep pool of oil, and a brief steam followed by a gentle sauté gives you vegetables that you will crave. Begin tonight with one deliberate plate, and pay attention to how you feel about 2 hours later and again before bed. In the next part, I will turn these methods into a first recipe so you can taste how structure becomes comfort and how comfort can still keep you safe. The risk that quietly breaks a good plan is not a lack of knowledge, it is a lack of rhythm. Because when progress comes in bursts, your numbers rise and fall like a spring tide, and your hope washes out with it. I want you to replace that chaos with small rituals that are easier than willpower and stronger than a fresh set of rules. Begin with one deliberate plate at dinner. Pair every starch with fiber, protein, and a gentle fat. Take a calm look at your after-meal number about 2 hours later, or simply notice how your body feels before bed, and make one thoughtful choice about sauces or snacks so you do not give the speed back to the food you just tamed. These rituals matter because repetition changes both biology and behavior. A structured meal asks the stomach to take its time. The rise after eating softens, and your brain hears a clearer fullness signal, which means the hours that follow are steadier, and snacking loses its grip. Over days and weeks, that predictability becomes a foundation. You wake with more even energy. The afternoon slide is shorter, and the night stops punishing your effort. The lab slip will eventually agree, but your mood and your stride will tell you first. There are strengths that keep this alive, and trade-offs that deserve honesty. The strength is freedom from counting every crumb and the return of meals that feel generous while still keeping you safe. Another strength is emotional gravity. Keeping one simple promise to yourself each evening rebuilds trust, and trust is what keeps a plan from collapsing when life gets noisy. The trade-off is attention and patience. Bodies are personal, days are different, and on a low-movement day, or when medicine shifts or stress runs high, the same plate can behave differently. That is not a failure, it is feedback. On those days, slide more space toward vegetables, choose a leaner protein, keep higher fiber carbohydrates modest, and let the next calm plate correct the course without drama. I keep guardrails practical. If a party is ahead, eat a steady plate before you go, so you arrive calm rather than hungry. Then enjoy a serving that fits inside the frame. If stress calls you to the pantry, set a bowl of crisp vegetables where your hand lands first and keep bottled sauces to a light drizzle. If you spent a quiet day on the couch, tilt your next meal toward extra vegetables and a clean protein, and keep the starchy quarters small but satisfying. One steady decision repeated often beats a dozen dramatic promises you cannot keep. You do not need a new diet each season. You need a forgiving rhythm that returns you to center after a human day. Build the ritual, keep it gentle, and let your after-meal numbers and evening energy confirm that steadiness is growing. In the next part, I will walk you into a weeknight recipe so you can feel that steadiness on the fork and not just hear it from me. The fear that keeps many people from Italian night is the memory of a bowl that sent blood sugar climbing and turned comfort into regret, and that fear is powerful enough to chase joy out of the kitchen. I want you to keep the comfort and lose the chaos. Tonight we rebuild the same warmth with a deliberate plate, pairing a modest serving of higher fiber pasta or a bean-based noodle with a generous bed of non-starchy vegetables and a simply seasoned protein, so flavor stays big while the rise after eating stays calm. I make this the way I would for my own table. A lean sausage or a piece of chicken goes into an air fryer, so the edges turn brown and the center stays tender without a heavy pan of oil. While it cooks, I let onions, carrots, and a tumble of sprouts take a brief steam under a lid, and then a quick sauté so they land crisp tender with their natural sweetness intact. By the time the protein is ready, the skillet has painted half the plate with color, and we have not even touched the starch. The quiet physiology beneath this is simple. Vegetables that carry fiber slow the way a meal leaves the stomach. Protein and a small amount of healthy fat ask that stomach to take its time. When the stomach slows, the peak, after a meal, softens. If the starch arrives as a small nest of higher fiber pasta, instead of a mound of soft white noodles, you get the twirl and the comfort without the rush that used to push your glucose higher than you wanted. Let me be candid about strengths and trade-offs. The strength is joy without panic. You keep the scent of browned edges, the sweetness of sautéed vegetables, and the bite of pasta while your numbers stay steadier. Another strength is flexibility. Swap sausage for chicken, carrots for zucchini, pasta for a bean-based noodle or a warm spoon of beans, and the plan holds. The trade-off is attention. Bottled sauces can hide added sugars and extra sodium, and a heavy hand with cheese can crowd the plate. Treat cheese like a seasoning, keep sauces light, and let vegetables keep half the space so comfort does not harden into a spike. Here is how to place it on a busy weeknight. Fill half the plate with the onions, sprouts, and carrots you just brought to life in the pan. Set a portion of browned protein beside them. Add a small serving of higher fiber pasta or a bean-based noodle with a pleasant chew. Finish with a light drizzle of olive oil and a pinch of grated cheese so the dish glows rather than drowns. Then take a quiet look at how you feel about 2 hours later and again before bed. If your energy feels smoother and your numbers play along, you have proof that comfort and control can share the same plate. You do not have to retire Italian night. You have to give it better company. When vegetables lead, when protein carries fullness, and when the starch is chosen for fiber and kept modest, the flavors you love return without the cost you fear. In the next part, I will carry this same logic into another recipe so variety keeps growing while steadiness stays. The risk I worry about most on weeknights is not a single ingredient. It is boredom, because boredom sends people back to the drive-thru and hands their blood sugar to speed. I want you to keep flavor high and numbers steady with 2 plates that feel like real-life comfort. The first is a chicken thigh and zucchini medley that stays juicy at the center and turns lightly crisp at the edge. The second is a chicken apple sausage tossed with bean sprouts and onions that delivers a friendly hint of sweetness without the spike you fear. Both ride on the same structure. Vegetables lead, protein carries fullness, and a modest higher fiber starch steps in only if you want it. Here is how I make the chicken thigh plate when I come home hungry. I season the thighs simply and let an air fryer brown the outside so the inside stays moist. On the stove, I give onions, zucchini, and a few coins of carrot a brief softening under a lid, and then a quick uncovered sauté with a small kiss of olive oil so they land crisp, tender, and a little glossy. The strength of thighs is satisfaction. They offer more moisture and flavor than breast meat, which makes late-night snacking less tempting. The trade-off is fat and salt if you are not paying attention. Trim some skin if you need to, keep seasonings clean, and let vegetables cover half the plate so fullness comes from volume and fiber rather than heaviness. Now, let me bring you the chicken apple sausage medley, a dish that wins over skeptics. Choose a sausage without added sugar and slice it into coins for a fast turn in the air fryer, while a pan turns onions, celery, and beans sprouts into a warm, crisp bed. The plate smells like comfort and tastes lightly sweet by design, yet behaves well because fiber from sprouts and vegetables slows the meal, and protein anchors hunger. The strength is approachability for families who are wary of healthy cooking. The trade-off is that labels and salt matter. Read the package, keep portions modest, and let vegetables carry the largest share so you do not overload the plate with sodium. Here is the quiet physiology underneath both plates. Fiber slows the exit of food from the stomach. Protein and a small amount of healthy fat ask that stomach to take its time. A slower stomach usually means a softer rise after eating and a calmer evening. If you want a starch, add a small nest of a bean-based noodle or a spoon of warm beans and watch how your energy feels later in the day. I will be honest about limits, so nothing blindsides you. Bodies are personal, and days are different. A shift in medicine, a still day with little movement, or a run of stress can nudge the same plate to behave differently. That does not mean the plan broke. It means the next meal should slide more space toward vegetables, choose a leaner protein, or skip the starch while keeping the frame. What you notice about 2 hours after eating and again before bed will tell you if you are moving in the right direction. If the fear that kept you from the kitchen was bland food that drives you away, these 2 plates are a way back. The chicken thigh medley gives you tenderness and depth without a pool of oil, and the chicken apple sausage with sprouts gives you gentle sweetness that acts like a partner rather than a troublemaker. Choose one tonight, serve it on a deliberate plate, and notice the steadiness that follows. The fear that keeps favorite foods off too many plates is not just about sugar. It is the belief that steak and fried chicken belong on a never-again list, a belief that turns dinner into a loss and often invites a rebound later. I want you to keep the pleasure and lose the spike. Tonight we give steak better company, and we rebuild fried chicken so the crunch stays and the crash does not. Steak has never been the villain on its own. The trouble has lived in the mashed potatoes, the bread basket, and the sweet sauce that rush through the gut and push glucose up fast. When I cook steak at home, I season simply use a hot pan or an air fryer to brown the edges and keep the center tender, and then I let vegetables claim half the plate while a small higher fiber comfort side takes the last bit of room if I want it, maybe warm beans or a spoon of quinoa with herbs. Fiber lays the brakes, protein and modest fat slow the stomach, and the rise after eating bends into a gentle hill. The strength is a deep feeling of satisfaction that lasts. The trade-off is attention to salt and to bottled sauces that can smuggle in sugar. Fried chicken can come back to your table without bringing trouble. I cut chicken into tender pieces, dust them with a higher fiber flour like almond or chickpea, dip in beaten egg, and give them a light roll in a low-sugar crumb before the air fryer turns them golden. The inside stays juicy, the outside has a crisp you can hear, and the oil stays mostly in the bottle. I serve that beside vegetables that were briefly steamed and then quickly sautéed so they keep their color and snap. The strength is obvious in the first bite. Comfort without panic. The trade-off is that nut-based coatings carry more energy and lean cuts dry out if you overdo the time. So pull the basket a little early and let the meat rest. Underneath both plates is the same quiet physiology. Vegetables that carry fiber slow the exit of food from the stomach. Protein and a small amount of healthy fat extend fullness and soften the peak after a meal. What hurt you in the past was not steak as a food or chicken as a food. It was the company they kept. When you give them a better crowd, bright cabbage and onions instead of a white roll, a squeeze of lemon instead of a sticky glaze, you trade a roller coaster for a calm tide. I want limits on the table too, so you can steer with confidence. Bodies are personal and days are different. A new dose of medicine, an easy chair kind of day, or a run of stress can nudge the same meal to behave differently. That is not a broken plan. It is feedback you can use. Keep portions reasonable, keep sauces simple, and keep half the plate for vegetables. If your after-meal reading about 2 hours later, or your evening energy is higher or lower than you like, shift more space to vegetables at the next plate, or trade a refined choice for a higher fiber partner that still tastes like home. If you have been told that safety and satisfaction cannot share a table, let this be your proof to the contrary. You do not have to give up steak or the joy of a crisp bite. You have to give them better company and a better method. Start with one deliberate plate tonight. Notice the steadiness that follows, and carry that win with you as we head into the final part of this journey together. The danger that ends most good plans is not a forbidden food, it is burnout. The tired story that says you must trade joy to stay safe. I want you to lay that down tonight by choosing one ritual that is small enough to keep and strong enough to matter. Build one deliberate plate, pair every starch with fiber, protein, and a gentle fat, and take a quiet look at how your body feels about 2 hours later and again before bed. That loop of action and observation is how hope becomes evidence, and evidence becomes trust. Here is what I have seen again and again. Speed is the hidden driver. Refined foods move fast and push glucose up. Fiber slows the road. Protein and modest fat ask the stomach to take its time, and a slower stomach means a softer peak after a meal. When half the plate belongs to colorful, non-starchy vegetables, when a quarter holds a simply seasoned protein, and when the last quarter welcomes a higher fiber starch if you want it, flavor returns, and the numbers move like a calm tide instead of a storm. The beauty of this plan is that it fits real American days. You can make it in a small kitchen after a long shift, or at a backyard table with neighbors. Swap ingredients to match your taste and budget, and the frame still holds. The honest trade-off is attention and patience. Habits write their story over days and weeks, not minutes, and medicine, movement, and stress will nudge results. Treat that as feedback. On those days, slide more space toward vegetables. Choose a leaner protein, or keep the starchy quarter modest and let the next calm plate do the repair. I will be clear about limits so you can steer safely. This is not a replacement for your clinician or your medicines. It is the ground where those tools work best. If your pattern shifts or a new prescription changes appetite, bring that to your doctor so the plan stays yours and stays safe. What carries people forward is not perfection. It is a forgiving rhythm. One plate built on purpose, one quiet check of how you feel a short while later, one kind adjustment at the next meal. That is how comfort and control finally sit at the same table. Tonight, before you put away the pan, make that plate on purpose and notice the steadiness that follows. If your body feels calmer and your evening is kinder, keep that as proof that you can eat well and feel human again. I will be here with meals that taste like home and behave like a partner, because you never had to choose between pleasure and safety. You only had to choose structure and keep showing up for yourself.